This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks to witnesses for being here. My first question is to Mr. Bedard. Is there a limit on or a legal restriction as determined by Canadian courts on the power of parliamentary committees to order the production of papers?
Courts have recognized the existence of the power to send for records and papers, and in the parliamentary privilege jurisprudence, they have recognized that the exercise of the privilege itself, it's not something that is subject to court scrutiny. So the matter in which the privilege is exercised is for Parliament alone to decide, and in recognizing the power to send for records and papers, they haven't set any limit to this privilege.
Okay. So how would you characterize a scenario where a committee of Canada's House of Commons ordered the production of papers and the entity of whom the production was requested did not comply? How is that characterized? Is that a breach of the privilege of the House of Commons? Is it does it rise to being illegal? How is that characterized?
When there's a production order from a committee and there are concerns raised with respect to some of the information that is sought, the entity to which the information is requested may try to put in place or suggest some measures to protect the information for which they have concern, and the committee may decide to accept those measures, may accept to no longer insist on the production order, or may decide to insist on the production of all the information unredacted. If it is the case and the order of the committee is not complied with, the committee can report back to the House, and based on the committee's report, this could be raised as a question of privilege in the chamber.
So that's the appropriate venue for it to be escalated to should the committee's request not be satisfied.
That's correct. The committee has the power to adopt order for the production of documents, but does not have the power to sanction. That power belongs to the House, and the proper process is for the committee to report to the House, and then a question of privilege can be raised, and the Speaker will rule on the matter.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Shea, did PCO direct departments or anyone within PCO to defy the will of this committee?
PCO did not direct any department nor its own employees to defy the will of the committee. However, PCO has used the same long-standing approach to the redaction of its own documents and would give the same advice to others. There are long-standing principles used by successive governments.
So the committee ordered the production of documents, and PCO did not meet the request. And we heard testimony yesterday, or we heard read into the record, access to information results, an email from PCO that explained there was no attempt to satisfy the production order of the committee. Are you familiar with the email that I'm referring to?
I have not seen the email. I do not believe it has been provided to us. My understanding is there was an email that was referred to, if it is the one I'm thinking of, that was between Paul McKinnon and Maya Welburn. Is that the email that you're referring to?
Yep.
Maya Welburn left PCO in advance of when this particular parliamentary motion took place. And so while I have not seen the email, I can say with confidence it would not relate to this particular motion, as she was not a PCO employee at the time.
Is the attitude of PCO to defy the obligation for your department to honor the responsibility that you have when an order of a committee of parliament is made for you to produce documents. It's not subject to any test that you choose to apply to it, or if you look to past practices of your predecessors or other individuals, that's not the test that needs to apply. the test that needs to apply is that we have the power as Parliament to request those documents. And your failure to produce them is a breach of the privileges of Canada's Parliament. And what happens when you do that as a department, when PCO does that, or agents acting on behalf of PCO do that, and they do it during successive governments, they say, well, look, we've been doing this for a long time. But I don't think that it's an encouraging sign to Canadians. I don't think that it's an honorable defense for someone to say, well, we've been breaking the law for 10 years, and so there were lots of different people who held elected office over the course of 10 years, and we got away with it. So we're going to continue to do it, and that's the precedent that has been established. There are hundreds of years of precedent that this law has existed under, and parliamentary privilege is not subjected to tests applied by PCO or by departments. It is a question that has been settled in law, and I have not heard an argument from you that excuses you from your responsibility to furnish this committee with those documents.
Ms. Cusi for 6 minutes, please. Or, sorry, 5 minutes, please.
Sure. Thank you very much. First of all, Mr. Sheikh, who is Maya Welborn?
She was previously the Assistant Secretary to Cabinet for Legislative and House Planning, and she has since left PCO, as I mentioned.
Okay, and who took her place?
Julia Assetti.
Okay, and who does Julia Assetti report to?
Paul McKinnon.
Okay, and what is Paul McKinnon's role?
He's the Deputy Secretary to Cabinet for Governance, which includes machinery of government as well as the Legislative House Planning role.
Okay, so that would be out of the PCO.
That would be out of the PCO.
Okay, so I have a document here, which I read into the record last time, which is out of the PCO. Paul McKinnon is still at the PCO. I'm going to ask, Monsieur Bedard, are we entitled to these documents? And it was this opposition that passed the request to have the documents, that passed the motion to have the documents. Are we entitled to those documents since we passed a motion to that we should have those documents?
Provided the document you're referring to falls within an order that has been adopted by the committee.
Right. An order was adopted?
The committee is entitled to the document.
That's right. So an order was adopted that says that we are entitled to these documents, and yet I have here a note to Mr. McKinnon from Maya, who is informing Mr. McKinnon, who is still at the PCO, so under this branch that is here today, which says, and I'll read it again, the government considers it non-binding. Parliament does. If government doesn't produce documents as ordered by the House, then the matter can escalate in a number of different ways, including as far as finding that government is in contempt, minister or official being called to bar, not confidence vote, that this is the same kind of scenario as last June with Ian Stewart being called to the bar. So as my colleague, Mr. Barrett, pointed out, this was a conversation with someone who is still in the PCO. Is Paul McKinnon, are you on the same page as Paul McKinnon? Do you have meetings with Mr. McKinnon in terms of determining how you interpret what where your direction comes from? Because if you are on the same page as Mr. McKinnon, then the decisions of this committee are not binding. And it's very clear to me from this email where the PCO takes their direction. And it's not from this committee. It's not from parliamentarians. It's from the government. It's very clear by this document here. And I think anyone from any party, in particularly the government, is just obstructing democracy, in fact, by saying that we would not be entitled to these documents. But yet it seems that this is what is going on at PCO. So again, I remind all opposition members that we were the ones on this side of the House who made the decision to have these documents come from the government in a completely unredacted form in both official languages.